What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Do me a favor on this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up and give it a like. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and make sure you hit that bell on the bottom right corner to get notifications every time I upload a video. Today's video, we're going to be talking about how to fish points and my best bait selection to fish points. Now, if you're new to bass fishing, basically a point is a place in the land or the lake where the land makes a point, and it's very easy to spot on a map. It's very easy to spot when you're just looking at the bank. It looks very triangulish, and what that means is the land runs into the water and gradually slopes down, forming, a point. Out here on Dell Hollow, actually just shot some video of finding points on the map before I go up there and fish them. So I'm going to go show you that first. Alright guys, so what we're doing here is we're actually idling some points. And if you can see on this Navionics map, on this Lowrance unit, on your top right side, that bright blue is actually shallower water, and you can see it makes a little point. We're coming up on top of it, and you'll see in the top left corner, that's the down imaging. That's below the boat, and in the bottom we have our side imaging. So actually out to my left, we're scanning the side of the point, and out the right we're coming up on about a 45-degree angle, but you'll see in the top right where it actually makes a point, and that's the area we're trying to concentrate on. And as we scan around, we're looking for any irregularities, a high spot, maybe a ditch that cuts into the point, grass lines, and that's where fish are going to concentrate. I always like to start at the highest point of the point and work my way down. And the side scan really helps out, because on some of these deep points you don't have to get right on top of everything. As you can see on the top left, the down scan is getting shallower, and you're really looking for a hard bottom as well. And so we're getting a little bit of a return up top. That's actually grass up on this point, and that's pretty much how you're going to scan a point right there. And you can see out to the right of this point on the side scan, we've got a stump or maybe some brush, those two little dark spots right there. Anytime you have structure on top of structure, it's never a bad place to stop. And believe it or not, on the down scan here, you can see those two little dots. Looks like there's maybe one fish there sitting there. Okay, say you have selected a couple points on your Navionics card or Lake Master card, paper map, or you've just been idling down the lake and you see some beautiful points like what is right here behind me. What makes a point a good point? That's based on time of the year, what lake you're at, and almost basically what stage the fish are. Are they pre-spawn, post-spawn? Is it in the fall? Is it early winter? I personally like a point that comes out really close to deep water, because any fish in the pre-spawn wants to transition from deep to shallow fairly quickly. If those water temperatures rise up real quick, those fish will come out of deep water and they'll get really, really shallow on top of this stuff. I like places where the creek channel swings right up next to a point, maybe on the side of it. What else makes a good point? Look at the rock. What's the point made of? Is it mud? Is it clay? Is it pea gravel? Is it chunk rock? One thing on points I really look for, especially on the sides of points, I want places where it goes from like pea gravel to chunk rock, transition areas. Places where the point is very well defined, when current can run over it. If it's got some stumps, some brush on it, makes it even better. That's places bait fish are going to congregate. Bass are going to always follow the bait. They're going to get behind those stumps, behind the brush when the current runs across. When you're fishing these points, make sure you fish the down current side. That's very critical on river lakes like Kentucky Lake, Pickwick Lake, Gunnersville, where when they run current, those bass that sit on the down current side, and you want to throw up current and bring your bait with the current. Makes a very natural presentation. So a lot of times, instead of fishing if this is the point, your boat's right here, you're casting right like this. If the current's running this way, your boat needs to be over here and throwing across the point and bringing it very natural like. Now when there's low current conditions such as the early spring, you can kind of fish around the point. I always start at the tip, throw to the shallowest part, and then come off of it and make my choice. Do I want to go left or right and work my way around. Some guys like to start on the side of the point and gradually work themselves all the way around it, and eventually they're going to run into fish somewhere. And fish do suspend off the end of points, and they're kind of tough to catch, but there are some ways to catch them. All right, so you can see on this map here on Avionics, we're on the main lake, heading up toward a big tributary. And there is several defined points up on this map. We've got one right here, we've got one here, there's a point here. These are all very basic points, great transition areas in the spring as those fish come off the main river and start working their way back in the pockets and the creeks. They'll use these points to come up and feed in shallow water and back off into deep water. Very easy to see these on your map, especially on the Navionics card, really well on Lake Master as well. These are very defined, obvious looking features you cannot overlook. Now I want to go into baits I use for fishing point, and for this video we're really going to talk about the pre-spawn period. My number one bait, I always have one tied on anyway, but I really love a crankbait, and even lipless crankbaits for fishing points. The one reason is you can cover so many different water columns with a crankbait, and you can have 3 different crankbait rods tied up. Now this week I've been using the 6-inch Curve 55. It goes about 10 foot deep, and that's about the shallowest part I've been fishing on these points, just ticking the top of the point. But you can cover anywhere from 20 foot to 4 foot with crankbaits, and you can fish them fast and effectively. In the deflection off those rocks, off those stumps, that's going to trigger reaction bites. So find some crankbaits you're really comfortable with, pair them up with how deep the point you're fishing is. I throw 10XD on points that are 17, 18 foot deep on Kentucky Lake. Second bait I really like to use, if you want to find out what's on the bottom, what kind of gravel is down there, the rock piles, it's a Carolina rig. Got a brush hog tied on this one. This is one of my favorite Carolina rig baits right here. It's all twisted up. That happens to everybody. And basically you have a weight system. You've got your weight way up here, 2 beads in a swivel, and allows your bait to float up high. But what makes the Carolina rig awesome for fishing points is this weight allows you to feel what's on the bottom. If it's real spongy, you've got a really muddy point. If it's tick, 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 that's a gravel point. If you feel lots of pulls and jerks and really, really hard, you're going to have some good chunk rock down there. A Carolina rig, it's basically like a map in your hand. You can map out the bottom of a point really, really quick with the Carolina rig, and you can catch a lot of big fish, especially pre-spawn on this. Very slow presentation, those really, really tough days. I like Carolina rigging a brush hog. I use a lizard once it starts to warm up and those fish get ready to go do their thing up shallow. You catch those fish on the secondary points on that Carolina rig really well. The third bait I really like fishing points with, I actually just like fishing it in general, and that's a football jig. This is a smaller Kitech tungsten football jig. Get a lot of good bottom contact. I can really feel what's down there. I can fish it really, really slow. If there's some stumps down there or some big boulders, I can crawl this football jig around it and let it sit there and shake it. And a lot of times when those fish are sitting there, they'll just thump this thing. Very good at covering water fast with a football jig, but you can also fish it really, really slow. Crawfish presentation. Those crawfish, they'll get under those big rocks. They'll get in the gravel, and those bass and move them around, and they'll scurry off. And that shallow water warms up really fast. So that's why I like this football jig, throwing on top and slowly bringing it all the way down a point. Any brand to do. That's just the one I had tied on. I know I got a dirty jig shirt, so don't crucify me. I've got some of those too. My fourth favorite bait, when it's windy, when it's pre-spawn, you hear guys talking about wind-blown points. Spinnerbait, wind-blown points. If you don't throw a spinnerbait a lot, you need to get some, and you need to throw them on windy days, especially those warmer spring days when the wind starts blowing in. It really breaks up the water clarity, and it gets the bait fish going. And there's not a better bait when it's wind blown is using a spinner bait. I really like a double willow. This one's 1/2 ounce. I can fish in 4-foot water, or I can slow it down and fish 12, 14 foot deep. It's all about how fast you retrieve it. I use a 6-3 to 1 reel, so I'm not really going fast, I'm not really going slow. Spinner bait, you'll hear the old timers talk about, when it's windy, you better fish at wind-blown points. Well, they're true. Those bass really feed on those windy points. The last bait I have is a very versatile one, and it is a swim bait. This one's actually the little creeper 6-inch trash fish. But what's great about a swim bait is you can fish it 2 foot deep, or you can fish it 40 foot deep. All you got to do is figure out what size swim bait head you want to throw. I'll use a light 3/8 to a 1/2 if I'm fishing, say, 6 to 12 foot deep. I'll even fish a 1/2 out to 20 foot deep. But if you want to fish a point that goes out to 40, 50 foot of water on some lakes, go with the 3/4 1 ounce head. Fish it really slow. You can burn it, you can kill it. If you find bass that are suspended over a point, which is a very common thing, especially in a lot of clear water lakes, just count it down to the desired depth and start your retrieve. If you want to put an underspin on a swim bait, a great way to fish a point. You can cover a lot of water. You're going to have to be a little bit more precise with the swim bait. It's not a fish locator, it's more of a fish catcher. If you're fishing a point with a jig or Carolina rig, you're getting a lot of bites, you're seeing a lot of bait. That's when you pull out the swim bait and try to catch old big. Guys, if you like this video, make sure you give it a like. Hopefully this helps you out, gives you a little insight of how I break down, how I fish a point, how I choose a point when I go fishing. Unfortunately, this week at Dell Hollow, I've only chose a few right ones. But first time being here, I'm really excited. So guys, thanks you so much for subscribing and watching this video. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do that for me and hit that little bell that gives you a notification every time I upload a video. I got more videos coming. If you have an idea for my next video, whether it's baits or how to fish certain parts of your lake, just let me know in the comments section below. The Baitman is out.